They call it one of the great mysteries of history. The missing nose of the Great Sphinx of Giza. A monument older than the pyramids themselves. Carved from a single massive block of limestone staring endlessly toward the Nile under the desert sun. For thousands of years, the Sphinx has stood as a silent guardian of ancient Egypt. But sometime in its long life, something, or someone, destroyed its face. And the most popular legend says, it happened on one violent moonlit night in 1798. Picture the scene. Napoleon Bonaparte's army has marched across the scorching sands of Egypt, a trail of dust and cannon wheels stretching to the horizon. The French are not just here to conquer. They've brought with them a team of scholars, engineers and artists tasked with documenting the wonders of the ancient world. In the flickering torchlight of their camp, pyramids loom like mountains in the distance, and there, rising from the sand like a giant dream, is the Sphinx. At this time, the Sphinx is not the proud, fully visible monument we see in photographs today. It is buried up to its neck in centuries of desert sand. Only the head and a hint of the shoulders exposed. Its surface is weathered and cracked, coloured by 1,000 years of sunrise and sunset. The limestone is warm to the touch from the day's heat, cooling slowly under the clear desert night sky. The soldiers are in awe, but awe alone doesn't fill empty hours between campaigns. According to the story, one group of French troops, perhaps drunk, perhaps bored, perhaps showing off their firepower, decide to test their aim. They raise their muskets and small cannons toward the ancient statue's face, the moon casting shadows across its time-worn features. The air is dry, still, silent, until the first blast echoes off the stone and rolls across the desert like thunder. Fragments of limestone chip away. Another shot rings out. And then another. The face of the Sphinx, already softened by erosion, takes the blows with dull, hollow cracks. Until, with one final shattering report, the bridge of the Great Nose gives way and collapses, tumbling into the sand below. The Sphinx's serene expression, carved perhaps 4,500 years earlier, is now forever altered. Where once there was a regal, symmetrical face, there is now a jagged wound. Moonlight spills into the empty space where the nose used to be, and fine dust drifts into the still night air. For them, it's a moment of reckless amusement. For history, it's an act of irreversible vandalism. At least, that's the legend. The truth, however, is less certain. Some historians point to earlier drawings and paintings of the Sphinx from before Napoleon ever set foot in Egypt. And in many of these, the nose is already gone. One sketch from the 18th century shows the same broken profile we see today. And there are even medieval accounts of the nose being deliberately destroyed by a Sufi Muslim in the 14th century, who believed the Sphinx was an idol that encouraged pagan worship. So maybe Napoleon's soldiers weren't the culprits after all. But the rumour stuck. Partly because it fit so perfectly with the image of rowdy troops in a foreign land, and partly because Napoleon himself became such a larger-than-life figure in history. The Great Sphinx, without its nose, took on a different personality. The missing piece gave it a more haunting expression. A mixture of timeless calm and quiet injury. Visitors in the 19th century described it as looking wounded yet eternal. Artists painted it under dramatic skies. The wind curling sand around its base, the face staring out over an empty ancient landscape. Even in its damaged state, or perhaps because of it, the Sphinx became an icon. When you stand before it today, the mood is unforgettable. The desert stretches endlessly behind it, the pyramids rising like stone ghosts nearby. The Sphinx's eyes seem to gaze past you, into the deep time of human civilization. The surface of the limestone glows gold at sunrise, turns pale beige under the midday sun, and melts into deep orange as evening falls. Its missing nose no longer looks like vandalism alone. It looks like history itself, marked into stone. Whether it was shattered by Napoleon's men, by medieval iconoclasts, or simply eroded by thousands of years of wind and sand. The result is the same, a face both familiar and incomplete. It is a reminder that even the greatest monuments are fragile, and that every mark, whether carved by artists or inflicted by soldiers, becomes part of the story. In a way, the Sphinx's missing nose has made it more famous. It has become a symbol not just of ancient Egypt, but of the layers of history, myth, and rumour that surround all great works of human creation. And perhaps that's why the story of Napoleon's soldiers lives on. Not necessarily because it's true, but because it's the kind of story that feels true. If you stand there long enough, under the Egyptian sky, you might feel it. That strange mix of awe and melancholy. The wind carries the scent of dry stone and ancient dust. The silence is deep, but you can almost hear the echoes of all the centuries the Sphinx has endured. The laughter of soldiers, the chants of priests, the whispers of travellers, the roar of the wind across the Sahara. And there it stands, as it always has. Not perfect, not whole, but eternal. The missing nose is no longer a flaw. It is a scar, and scars have their own kind of beauty.